We are on page 96, and it's by Prafula Chandra Gangopadhyaya. I first saw Coca Maharaj in 1915 in Ranchi. He had come there to celebrate Sri Ramakrishna's birthday. Swami Premananda and Mahapurush Maharaj had come there for the same purpose in 1913 and 1914, respectively. The presence of Swami Premananda had given rise to a wave of divine love. How exquisitely he sang and danced in spiritual ecstasy. He was like one inspired. Although he was perspiring profusely due to the effort, his dance knew no stopping. It was truly a marvelous sight. The tremendous enthusiasm aroused in everyone who witnessed this divine dance beggars description. Coca Maharaj's visit also generated a wave of divine bliss. How much we troubled him by our loving entreaties. Every day he had to eat at the house of numerous devotees. Everyone wanted to feed him. He couldn't refuse anyone for fear of disappointing them. On the Bengali New Year's Day, he had to eat at a number of homes, and he wasn't allowed to eat sparingly at any of them. Fearing for his health, I asked him, "Maharaj, I hope you don't fall ill due to eating so much." At this, he said with a laugh, "Do you think it is I who have eaten all this? I have offered everything to the Master and Holy Mother. I won't suffer from any ill effects." But one day I saw him in a different mood. That day my daughter, Nani, Coca Maharaj had named her for Mahamai, sat down to feed Coca Maharaj, but he seemed to be in no mood to eat and was making all kinds of excuses. Finally, Nani fed him with her own hands. Seeing her and Coca Maharaj together, it looked as if a mother was feeding her petulant child by force. Maharaj's name, Coca, is indeed apt, I thought when I saw that. Now remember, Coca means baby. Once when I showed him some freshly prepared molasses, he immediately took one piece and swallowed it. It was just like a small child gulping down sweets. Once we were discussing which disciple of the Master possessed the attributes of which divine being. When we asked Coca Maharaj about himself, he said, "I have the attributes of a coca. What else?" In this way, he would brush aside such questions. Describing one of his dreams, he said one day, "I was sitting on a peacock and was traveling up to the heavenly regions. On both sides I saw various forms of gods and goddesses. I transcended their plane and went still further, finally reaching the Master and Holy Mother. I decided that I would stay there and not return to earth. But the Master, coming to know of my intention, said to me, 'You seem to be in a big hurry. Return to earth. You still have some work to do.' At this, we said, 'Maharaj, you saw that you were seated on a peacock. Do you possess the attributes of Kartikeya?' Maharaj answered with a laugh, 'As for that, you know best.'" Now there's the footnote on that. Kartikeya is the Hindu god of war and the son of Shiva and Parvati. His mount is the peacock. Once when I was performing religious ceremonies standing in a river, I suddenly saw the luminous form of a god with 4 hands. Thinking that it was an illusion, I rubbed my eyes and looked again, but the form was still visible. Afterwards, I went to Coca Maharaj to tell him about the vision. He was then staying at a devotee's house. I saw that he was lying on a cot, facing away from me. He was resting after taking his afternoon meal. When I started to leave the room on tiptoe so as not to disturb him, I heard him say, "Whatever you saw is true. You will see many things, such things in future." I was dumbfounded. It seemed to me that Coca Maharaj initiated people at the command of the Master. Once, when Maharaj was standing at the house of a devotee in Ranchi, he suddenly decided to go to Deogar. He didn't cite any reason. One of my sons, Badal, was then studying at Deogar Vidyapit, the school run by the Ramakrishna Mission. After reaching Deogar, Coca Maharaj went to the school, called Badal, and told him, "I will give you initiation." I have also seen him suffering from unbearable pain after initiating somebody. This happened when he initiated a woman in Varanasi. When I asked him the reason for this, he said, "Whenever I initiate anybody, I have to take the burden of the person's karma upon myself. The Master and the Mother send these persons to me, so what can I do? I have to initiate them. And people know that we are disciples of the Master. If we refuse them, where will they go? It is to save these people that the Master came." 2 of my sons died of cholera when I was in Patna. My wife was terribly grief-stricken. Coca Maharaj was in Varanasi at that time. Hearing of my bereavement, he asked me to come to Varanasi with my wife. He also made all the arrangements for our stay there. In Varanasi, he would talk on various topics with my wife every afternoon, and sometimes also take her on walks. He would fill her mind with holy thoughts to such an extent that she hardly found time to remember her dead sons. After some days, my wife showed hardly any signs of grief. To me, Coca Maharaj said, "Look here, what will you gain by grieving? You are thinking that this grief is unbearable, but if your wife passes away, you will have to bear that loss also." The Master used to say that if we think about it, we will realize that many people have to bear with much greater grief than ours. We have to try to increase our capacity to bear grief. My wife passed away a few months later. When I reminded Coca Maharaj of what he had said earlier, he said, "I knew then that your wife didn't have much longer to live, and that is why I wanted to give you courage to bear this loss." Swami Chetanananda had a tremendous capacity to endure physical suffering. Once when he was in Varanasi, he had to be operated upon a number of times. Swami Subodhananda and Coca Maharaj were present, as were many senior doctors. When the time came for Hari Maharaj to be operated on, he asked the doctor to wait a little. Then he went into a deep meditation and raised his mind above body consciousness. During the operation, he remained absolutely still. After the operation, Swami Subodhananda began to run his hand along Hari Maharaj's back and chest to bring his mind down. Coca Maharaj also began to whisper something in Hari Maharaj's ear. When Hari Maharaj returned to normal consciousness, he said, "I thought that I would give up my body, but Sharat didn't let me." That's Swami Subodhananda. At this, Coca Maharaj said, "Can you simply go away like that? Hasn't the Master told you that you still have work to do?" I was present when all this took place. Afterwards, when I expressed my amazement to Coca Maharaj about Hari Maharaj's tremendous self-control, he said, "When the mind is lifted to a very high plane, One does not feel any bodily pain. I will end my reminiscences by narrating an incident which demonstrates Koka Maharaj's great compassion. One day he gave me a piece of ochre cloth he had worn and said, "You can wear this at the time you perform your evening devotions. Afterwards, you can wear it at other times." My wife was still alive at that time. And then we go on to a short reminiscence of Swami Raghaveshwarananda. One day when I went to Bellarmont in the morning, I saw Koka Maharaj walking on the grounds. Seeing me, he gave a welcoming smile. I went and made pranams to him. After inquiring about the well-being of my family members, he said, "Come, let us go to the vegetable garden." I followed him to the garden. Upon entering the garden, Koka Maharaj suddenly stood still and remained in this condition for about 10 minutes. Wondering what had happened, I looked at his face. I saw him intermittently laughing like a child. Then he became serious again. After about 10 minutes, he said to me, "Previously, this place was a forest. Swamiji and I cleared the land up to this place. That is why, as soon as I come here, I remember Swamiji." After walking in the garden for about half an hour, Maharaj returned to his room. Then he told me to prepare tobacco for him, which I did. He began to smoke while lying down, conversing with me at the same time. He was then looking like a 5-year-old child. 5-year-old child smoking. Once when I was staying in a mess, I came down with a high fever, feeling very depressed. I began to think of Koka Maharaj. I thought, maybe I will get cured if I can eat Koka Maharaj's prasad. I soon began to feel drowsy. After what seemed like 10 minutes, I heard a voice say, "Where can I find Narayan?" The author of this, that's Raghaveshwarananda. "Which is his room?" Then I saw a monk enter my room with some prasad. He said to me, "It seems you are ill. Koka Maharaj has sent some prasad for you. There is nothing to worry about." Saying this, the monk left the room. I partook of the prasad and fell asleep. I dreamt of Koka Maharaj. When I woke up after about an hour, I was feeling perfectly healthy. It seemed as if I hadn't been ill at all. This was a later incident. Koka Maharaj had come from Jamtara and was staying at Mother's house in Odboden. He was very ill. I went to see him. Entering his room, I saw him lying on a bed. He was then all skin and bones. He may not survive this illness, I thought. Seeing me, he said with a laugh, "Can you recognize me, Narayan? I am a Koka. Have you not seen small children? They can't walk or sit up. They have to remain lying down." He joked for quite a little while in this manner. Who could have imagined that he was so ill? After about half an hour, he said to me, "I will introduce you to a lady devotee. She is very devoted. She had only one son who recently died. She is engulfed in sorrow and is always crying for her son. Please visit her once in a while to see how she is doing." These seem to be very short reminiscences from a group of monks. Swami Subodhananda. During his stay at Bhubaneswar, revered Koka Maharaj would often go for a walk in the jungle. There a prickly bush bore a kind of fruit, which, like a young boy, he would himself eat and also give us to eat. He would suddenly sit on small bushes, from which small birds, being alarmed, would then fly out with loud chirping. He did this nearly every day. When coming to Bhubaneswar from Puri by train, he would walk all the way from the station to the ashram with his bag and baggage, even in the terrible summer heat. He would never let anyone have the slightest clue that he was a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. We would feel scared in front of Mahapurush Maharaj and Swami Subodhananda. But Koka Maharaj would mix with us so freely that we never felt scared of him. Sometimes he would say, "Come, Manindra, let us have an arm wrestling contest. Let us see who has more strength." He would take his meals with us. He didn't have much bedding. Most of the time he used his arm as a pillow. Even in Bellarmont, I have seen him working with a sickle or a spade. His behavior and demeanor were extremely simple. And how he loved us. If one of us fell sick, he would come to inquire about his health 2 or 3 times a day. Once while eating, some of us began discussing some rather unpleasant sides of a monk's character. At first, Koka Maharaj didn't make any comment, but after some time he said, "You are criticizing that monk, but if you fall into the same condition, you too may be criticized by others. Therefore, don't engage in criticism of any kind." And now we have Sadhana Sengupta. My home is in Kalma, a village in Dhaka district, Bangladesh. Swami Premananda established a Ramakrishna ashram there. Since I was very young at the time, I don't remember anything about it. Koka Maharaj visited this ashram in 1925 to attend the celebrations held on the occasion of Sri Ramakrishna's birthday. He was accompanied by some other monks. The few days of the celebration passed in great joy and excitement. After the celebrations, together with 2 other devotees, I took initiation from Koka Maharaj. I didn't understand much about spiritual initiation then. Maharaj initiated me and then showed me how to perform japa himself. We had a small shrine dedicated to Sri Ramakrishna at our home. Once, when Koka Maharaj was sitting there, something strange happened. A lady who sold milk for a living suddenly appeared and made pranams to Koka Maharaj. As soon as she touched his feet, Maharaj screamed in pain, crying, "My feet are burning." We washed his feet and also applied sandal paste to them. At this, the burning sensation was reduced. 1 month passed in great joy in Koka Maharaj's company. After that, he departed for the Ramakrishna Mat, Dhaka. But from there he was supposed to go to Bellarmont. He wouldn't return to our village. I can't describe the pain this news gave me. In his absence, everything seemed to be empty. But a letter I received a few days later made me joyful again. It brought me the news that I was to go to Sister Nivedita's girls' school as a teacher. Brahmachari Ganen Maharaj, who was in charge of the affairs of the school, had asked my maternal uncle to send me there. I prepared to go. Koka Maharaj would visit the school once a week or so. He came there one afternoon. I was then suffering from a severe headache, and my head also felt hot. I caught hold of Maharaj's hand and, keeping it on my head, said, "Just see how hot my head has become. One can boil a pot of rice on it." At this, he began stroking my head and said, "Don't worry, your head will cool down." His words proved to be right, and my headache gradually lessened. All I would get in return for teaching at the school were free meals. Once, seeing my torn dress, Koka Maharaj inquired, "Don't you have sufficient clothes?" In answer, I started weeping. The next time I met Maharaj at Bellarmont, he gave me 2 new saris. After some days, my mother received a letter from Koka Maharaj informing her that he had got her a job as a school teacher in Ranchi. My mother was then working in Purulia, but Maharaj knew that living in Ranchi would be better for her in some ways. This gesture of his shows how much he cared about us. I accompanied my mother to Ranchi. We knew many devotees of Holy Mother there. My mother had been initiated by Holy Mother. Soon after arriving in Ranchi, however, my mother fell seriously ill. Devotees used to serve her in turns. After 8 or 10 days, my brother also went there. Koka Maharaj became very worried when he received the news of my mother's illness. He wrote to me, "The Master is worshipped every day at the house of Govinda Babu. Give the Master's consecrated water every day to your mother to drink, and also apply a little of it to her head." We followed Maharaj's instructions, and my mother slowly recovered. After some days, Maharaj sent me a rosary, which he had sanctified by performing japa on it himself. I think we don't need. In November 1930, I went to Kolkata to take an examination, after which I returned to Ranchi. In the beginning of 1931, I went to Kolkata again and began to reside at the Bhawanipur area. I visited Bellarmont nearly every week. I would go in the early morning and return after the evening arati. I would spend the whole day with Koka Maharaj. On each of my visits, I would bring fruits, sweets, and other food items for Maharaj. Koka Maharaj's room was next to Mahapurushji's room. The food items I took were for both of them. Depending on their health, their attendants would decide whether they could eat a particular item or not. Mahapurushji had great affection for my mother. If I couldn't visit Bellarmont on some particular week, he would notice my absence and send someone to my mother to make inquiries. He wouldn't let me leave the mott without taking my meal. Even after he lost the power of speech, he would ask me by signs whether I had eaten or not. When Koka Maharaj's health deteriorated, he was shifted to the library. His room, which was on the 2nd floor, was sunny and well ventilated. There I would visit him regularly. In 1932, Koka Maharaj's health was deteriorating rapidly. One day I came to see him with my elder brother and his 6-year-old daughter. Entering Maharaj's room, I saw that he was sleeping. I visited all the temples and wandered around the grounds of the monastery. After some hours, I went back to his room. He was still sleeping. By this time, my brother was restless to return home, and his daughter started crying. Reluctantly, I disturbed Maharaj in his sleep to tell him that I was leaving. Maharaj woke up and said, "You are leaving? But I didn't even know that you had come." He asked me to stay with him for some time. I told him everything and said that I would have to leave as my brother was getting impatient. "Then go," said Maharaj with some displeasure. I left his presence against his wishes. I felt very bad, because never before had Maharaj insisted on my staying with him in this manner. He knew that I would never have the opportunity to see him again. The scene of my last meeting with him is still fresh in my mind. I feel like running to him and taking shelter at his feet again, and thus be free from all fear and anxiety. I had lost my father at a very young age, but I had found him again in Koka Maharaj. My eyes become moist with tears whenever I think of all the affection he showered upon me. I didn't realize how much solace and joy these holy memories would give me in my old age. The bliss I experienced in his company can never be expressed in words. And we'll stop there this afternoon. Okay, our announcements. We will not have a gospel reading on December 31st. We will have our midnight meditation starting at 11:30 and ending at 12 a.m. January 1st. Sunday, January 1st, Pravrajika Vrajaprana will give a talk at 11 o'clock, Zoom, YouTube, and in person, called the topic is A Fresh Start. At Vespers on Kalpatara Day, which is January 1st, we'll have a reading right after the Arati service from the great master describing the events of the Kalpatara Day in Kasipur Garden before Ramakrishna passed away. So you're all welcome to come, and we would be very happy to see you here. Sorry I was late. I zoned. That was it. I was quietly getting ready for something, but didn't realize the time. So I apologize to all of you. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, we'll end with the chant. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Have a happy, happy New Year to everyone. I hope you're all enjoying the rain as much as we are.